The promises made by Donald Trump have finally come to fruition, igniting a geopolitical and social fire across the Middle East that no force on earth currently seems capable of extinguishing. This is the moment the world has anticipated, yet few truly understood how it would manifest on the ground within the borders of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We are witnessing an unprecedented shift in power, a transformation of the oppressed into the hunters, and the hunters into the hunted. This is the opportunity that millions of Iranians have waited for throughout nearly 5 decades of clerical rule. A singular chance at liberation that may never present itself again in this century. In the southwest of Tehran, the visual evidence of this collapse is stark and undeniable. A highway bridge, once a symbol of modern infrastructure, has become a concrete cage for the regime's elite. Armored vehicles, meant to project strength and suppress dissent, are now trapped between massive concrete pillars. These soldiers of the regime find themselves squeezed into the only shelter available, because above them, the sky belongs to the drones, and the coordinates for those drones are being provided by the very people they were sent to suppress. In a second-floor apartment overlooking the scene, a civilian holds a smartphone, not to record a memory, but to finalize a targeting solution. Just 200 meters away, one of the most brutal security forces in modern history has been forced to cower under highway overpasses in their own capital city. This role reversal is not the result of a professional military invasion alone, but the direct consequence of the Iranian people hunting the regime's armed forces to facilitate their final overthrow. They are using every tool at their disposal: encrypted communication channels, balcony windows, car windows, and simple smartphones. These are not professional intelligence officers or foreign saboteurs. They are the everyday fabric of Iranian society. They are barbers, taxi drivers, university students, housewives, retired teachers, and small shop owners. These are the ordinary people whom the regime has oppressed, executed, and imprisoned for 47 years without ever truly managing to silence their spirit. Today, the intelligence they gather reaches the strike drones in the sky within seconds. A 15-second video captured from a private balcony lands with the impact of a precision-guided smart bomb on that exact location less than 30 minutes later. This represents the deepest internal fracture in the history of the Iranian regime. The power that once dictated the movements of the streets is now fleeing from them, and the streets have been reclaimed by those who are systematically dismantling the apparatus of the state. To understand the gravity of this collapse, one must look at how this decentralized system of resistance actually functions. A landmark report published by the Wall Street Journal has documented for the first time in mainstream media the existence of a lethal algorithm that has fundamentally altered the internal dynamics of Iran. According to this report, released on March 12, 2026, Iranian civilians are leaking the precise locations of regime forces to foreign intelligence services, not as part of a formal hierarchical organization, but through entirely spontaneous and decentralized initiative. The process is terrifyingly efficient and incredibly rapid. A citizen notices a siege unit gathering in their neighborhood, an illegal checkpoint being established, or an Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps vehicle hidden in a side street. They record a brief video or simply note the GPS coordinates. This data is transmitted immediately through Persian-language telegram channels operated by Mossad or through the secure communication lines established by the CIA. Foreign intelligence services verify this incoming stream of data in a matter of seconds. Once verified, these coordinates are transferred directly to the flight computers of Israeli Defense Force aircraft or unmanned aerial vehicles, and the result is a surgical, devastating strike. On March 11th alone, the Israeli Air Force destroyed 10 separate siege checkpoints using this exact crowdsourced method. Surrounded columns of regime forces were seen dispersing in panic, fleeing their posts as Iranian state television was forced to acknowledge the loss of control. The impact on the ground was instantaneous. By the morning of March 13th, residents in the southern Tehran neighborhood of Kharan had officially taken control of the local siege headquarters after the garrison fled in fear of being targeted by their own neighbors. The message coming out of Iran is clear and unwavering. Trump fulfilled his promise. The fire is burning, and now it is the turn of the people. This is the moment they have waited for, a window of opportunity that will not open a second time. Despite official bans on celebrations and gatherings, Iranians are flooding the streets in defiance. The Islamic occupation forces, as they are now called by the protesters, had prohibited all forms of meeting, dancing, and singing. Yet the Israeli Defense Forces have begun systematically eliminating the Basij and IRGC checkpoints that were meant to enforce these prohibitions. In response, on the night of March 19, 2026, the Iranian people emerged in massive numbers to celebrate the traditional festival of fire ahead of the Persian New Year. These citizens are communicating under the most difficult conditions, bypassing state-controlled internet and risking their lives to ensure the regime falls. The most dangerous characteristic of this network for the regime is its lack of a central head. There is no leader to arrest whose capture would cause the movement to crumble. There is no central headquarters to raid. The movement is comprised of millions of voluntary observers, ordinary people going to work or returning from the supermarket. To suppress this movement, the regime would have to arrest the entire population of 88 million people. The Basij paramilitary force, which was never intended for border defense but for internal security and the preservation of the regime's iron grip on the streets, is now operationally paralyzed. Their doctrinal mission was to control the public and suppress anti-regime movements, yet they are now the ones being hunted. While mainstream media and some social media platforms have attempted to block or sanitize this information, labeling it as high-risk content, the truth continues to emerge through raw data and verified reports. Since the Iran-Iraq War, the Basij has been the regime's primary weapon against its own people. These were the men who beat protesters during the Mahsa Amini protests in 2022 and killed thousands during the bloody revolts of January 2026. The regime stood firm because of this capacity for repression, but that capacity has evaporated. It is technically impossible for a force to control a city when its members are trapped under bridges, knowing that the moment they show their faces, they will be reported by their own citizens and neutralized from the air. They cannot intervene in mass protests. They cannot patrol the streets because their routes are leaked in real time. They cannot even establish a stationary presence without their coordinates being transmitted to a drone within minutes. They are tactically isolated and operationally paralyzed. The footage emerging from Tehran shows Basij checkpoints being obliterated by drones and civil revolts in the Kavara neighborhood, where barricades are being raised by the people. Even an IRGC base east of Tehran was destroyed in the same manner, targeted with the help of civilian intelligence. The internal security apparatus has lost its reason for existence. The force created to protect the regime's hold on the streets is now fleeing those very streets. Beyond the physical collapse, the psychological destruction is even more profound. Every member of the Basij or the IRGC no longer just fears the sound of a drone in the sky. They fear the eyes of every person they encounter. They distrust the driver passing by, the woman standing on her balcony, the teenager looking at a phone on the street corner, and the elderly man exiting a shop. To these soldiers, every civilian is a potential source of intelligence that could lead to their death. This has devastating practical consequences for the regime's military planning. Operations cannot be organized because headquarters have been struck. Troops cannot be gathered because their coordinates leak within minutes. Communication is impossible because radios are intercepted and phones are monitored. Convoy routes are reported as they happen. The entire chain of command and control has been severed. Soldiers now view their own civilians as the primary enemy, and the civilian population is actively hunting the soldiers. This environment is achieving what billions of dollars in conventional weaponry could not. It is corrupting the security apparatus from the inside. The militiamen on the streets are acutely aware of this bitter reality. Even the most powerful man in the state, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, is reportedly fleeing to Moscow aboard a Russian cargo aircraft, seeking refuge while his counterpart Vladimir Putin remains protected in a secure hospital. As their leader flees, the soldiers left behind are left to face the wrath of a people they have oppressed for decades. In units abandoned by their leadership, the desire to discard the uniform and disappear into the civilian population increases exponentially. The Iranian regime is facing a two-front war from which there is no escape. The first front is in the sky, where the United States and Israel maintain a level of technological superiority that has rendered Iranian air defenses obsolete. The second front is the organic, decentralized civilian intelligence network, equipped with nothing more than smartphones and a desire for vengeance. The synergy between these two fronts is unstoppable. While a drone can detect a target, the civilian on the ground provides the context: how many people are inside, what vehicles are being used, and exactly when they intend to move. This flow of information is constant, occurring 24 hours a day without pause and at no cost to the foreign intelligence services. In military strategy, the control of the battlefield begins with the control of your own streets. Having lost the streets, the regime's efforts at the borders or in the sky have become irrelevant. The only tool they have left is violence, but even that has failed. Despite the announcement of 500 arrests and dozens of death sentences by Police Chief Ahmadreza Radan, the wave of resistance shows no signs of receding. In the world of espionage, every agent captured suggests the existence of dozens more who remain undetected. 500 arrests point to the existence of tens of thousands of active informants. Since the beginning of March, there has been no decrease in the volume of leaked videos. Instead, there has been a dramatic increase. For 47 years, the wall of fear kept the Iranian people in check because the regime appeared invincible. The IRGC controlled every corner, and the executioner's rope was always ready. But that perception of strength was shattered in a single night of epic anger. The air defenses collapsed, the generals went into hiding, and the Supreme Leader has been missing for 3 weeks following reports of his injury. The people realized that a regime that cannot protect its own bases and leaders cannot protect itself from its own citizens. Once the fear dissipated, it was replaced by nearly half a century of accumulated hatred and a thirst for justice. This is no longer simple civil disobedience. It is an active, coordinated revolt. A significant portion of the population has chosen to collaborate with external actors to dismantle the physical power of the state. Because this revolt lacks a central leadership, it cannot be decapitated. The regime is drowning in a sea of paranoia, unable to tell if a doctor, a grocer, or a neighbor is the one sending the coordinates for the next strike. The closest historical parallel is the French resistance during World War II. But while that movement relied on hundreds of trained agents, the Iranian resistance involves millions of people empowered by modern technology. The fact that mainstream global media like the Wall Street Journal are reporting on this civilian IDF operational cycle signals a total collapse of Iran's sovereignty. By March 2026, any claim of legitimacy by the Iranian state has effectively ended. The security apparatus, built at the cost of billions, has been forced into the shadows of bridges, terrified of the very people it was designed to rule. The monopoly on surveillance has shifted from the state to the citizens. Every instrument of repression has been tested and has failed. The soldiers hiding under the overpasses are not just hiding from drones. They are hiding from the inevitable judgment of history. The time of a state that must hide from its own people is short. The streets no longer belong to the mullahs. They belong to those who are methodically tracking the regime's every move. This control deepens with every video uploaded and every coordinate leaked. Data received in the last 24 hours indicates that the strikes against the Natanz nuclear facility are not isolated incidents, but part of a much larger strategy. While Iranian media and international agencies confirm the enrichment facility was targeted again, they continue to repeat the mantra that there is no radiation leak. This statement, while intended to prevent panic, reveals the true nature of the conflict. These attacks are not designed to cause a nuclear catastrophe, which would be a humanitarian disaster, but to destroy the functionality and continuity of the program. The goal is to make the systems that process uranium inoperable. Reports from the IAEA confirm that the structures and entrances to the underground facilities have sustained massive damage, cutting off access and operational capacity. The most critical shift in the last 24 hours, however, is the increased pressure from the United States regarding Iran's energy infrastructure. Washington has clearly stated that if the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened, the Iranian electrical and energy grids will be directly targeted. This changes everything. Centrifuges require a constant, stable supply of electricity and cooling to function. Even if the underground facilities remain physically intact, a collapse of the national power grid would render the nuclear program a useless collection of concrete and steel. Simultaneously, the regional impact of this war is accelerating. Iranian missile strikes against Israel have landed near strategic sites, causing hundreds of injuries and escalating the conflict into a battle over symbolic targets. We are seeing a war of Dimona versus Natanz, a struggle over energy lines and strategic survival. Economically, the world is reeling. The International Energy Agency has compared this conflict to the oil crises of the 1970s. The fate of a tunnel in Natanz now directly impacts oil prices in London, flight schedules in Tokyo, and industrial output in Europe. Diplomacy has become entirely disconnected from the reality on the ground. While the United States speaks of negotiations, Iran denies them, yet the destruction continues on both sides. This is the new face of modern warfare, where talks and total destruction happen in parallel. The final truth revealed by the events of late March 2026 is that the Iranian nuclear program is being buried not by a single bomb, but by the destruction of the world in which it could function. Without electricity, without logistics, without security, and without a functioning state, even the deepest bunker becomes nothing more than a tomb. The question is no longer whether the nuclear program will survive, but whether the Iranian state itself can survive long enough to even attempt a restart. The regime is paralyzed, the people are empowered, and the map of the Middle East is being redrawn in real time by the light of a smartphone screen and the fire of a drone strike.